Welcome to a post-Christmas Boxing Day edition of the Third Apron podcast. It's Boxing Day for us. It's December 26th as we record. I assume, considering the hour, we're not going to release until, if not tomorrow, at some point in the next few days. I don't know. Yossi figures all that out. Yossi, how are you doing? How was your holiday?
I'm doing well. It's been a nice little break from everything. Just been spending more time with my family, catching up with a lot of movies I've been wanting to see. We'll probably use this like dead time end of the year. That's December 26th through January 1st to go to the theater a little bit. There's a bunch of stuff that came out like in rapid succession. I'm trying to catch up with, and that's basically it. And then getting ready to talk more basketball. How was yours?
It was pretty uneventful. I watched basketball. I did a little bit of cooking. I had a minor kitchen fire, but I solved it. It's fine. I'm okay. My kitchen's okay. What I learned, and I'll out myself with this. Don't put parchment paper on a baking sheet if you're going to broil something. Parchment paper is very flammable, and I should have known that. But lesson learned. That's what I did on Christmas, aside from watching basketball. You're a big movie in the theaters person, right? Like you're not. I'm an older like. I love just picking out a random movie from like 1984 that I never saw and watching it. You go to the theater a lot?
I do both, but for new releases, I try to catch them in theater. Uh, so like Marty Supreme came out. I want to catch that while it's in theater. I'm in no rush. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. Then there's some like a couple more, a little more under the radar movies that I definitely want to catch in theater. There is Testament of On Lee. I don't know if you heard of that one. Have you seen The Brutalist?
No, I don't go to the theater that much
Okay.
anymore. I think my view of going to the theater generally is it either has to be such a visual spectacle or it has to be a movie that I want to see around other people. Like the shared experience is part of it. And I swear there are like two or three movies a year that are like that for me now.
That's hilarious you say that because I want to see all these movies that I think a lot of people haven't really heard of. Like I also want to see what's about to I already saw an early screening of No Other Choice, but I'm gonna see it again as it now has its wide release. There's a couple other things, but then the big reason, the big movie that's gonna get people who don't go to the theater at all, Avatar, I'm gonna completely skip on it. I just don't feel like going to it.
I've just never been a fan of that entire franchise. I am among the Avatar. I don't know that there is a real competition between the two Avatars. I am so firmly in the last Airbender camp. I think it's just one of the best TV shows made in the last whatever it is 20 25 years. I'm excited for that movie that's coming out on Paramount Plus next year. I'm a Last Airbender Avatar. I am not a James Cameron Avatar guy, but that is enough about movies. We're here to
Yeah.
talk about basketball. And in our series of trade deadline team by team previews, we have landed on the Central Division for today. So, in alphabetical order, we will be starting with the Chicago Bulls, who are $13.6 million below luxury tax. They have the full mid level exception available to them. Right now, they're slated to pick number 13 overall. They also have Portland's lottery protected first round pick this year. They are the number 17 offense, number 23 defense so far this year. After starting 6-1, they have gone 8-14 since. They are playing the Philadelphia 76ers as we speak. They have over $80 million in expiring contracts, and they can get to over $66 million in cap space this offseason. So, Yossi, if you were running the Chicago Bulls, what would you do at the trade deadline?
I would probably take things easy a little bit. I know there's going to be some pressure to do something. It's for multiple reasons. But their recent stretch in early December, now they're doing a little better. They're won four in a row. We'll see if that holds up against the Sixers tonight. But I think, they're probably a little closer to being like a bottom tier team than like a play-in team. I mean, like a playoff team, like a team that's like in the 6 through 8 range, that specifically. So I know there's now after being in the lottery about was it 3 years in a row now? They only made it 2022, right? So they're in the lottery 3 years in a row, but they didn't get one of those picks. They sent it to Orlando in one of those years. So they've had two draft picks now in the first round recently. I don't think that's quite enough. We'll see. It seems like Noah Senge's far away, especially now with this shoulder injury that took him out for the year. I think they need to do like one more trip to the lottery. I know they're not going to bottom out. They're too good to get into a top 7 pick type of situation. But I think realistically, they need to get another shot at getting another cornerstone. They could use another guy really anywhere. So I I think they need to focus on that first and then figure things out and then consider taking the next step next year. I still think they're way away from doing it. It's just impossible to predict the Bulls because every trade they've made in the past 5 or so years, completely unexpected. They're been like ranging from surprising to outright shocking. And it wouldn't surprise me if there is some, let's say, let's call it job preservation type move in the next few weeks with a pressure to get back into the playoffs. There's a couple guys, a lot of all-stars that they could potentially get for somewhat of a cheap price, but it might still cost the Bulls a lot to bring in these guys. It's just impossible to say what they're going to do. And I would bet that they're not going to do what I suggest.
Yeah, I think the Bulls have some longer term decisions to make. Is Kobe White going to be a part of their long term core? Do they want to pay what it's going to take to keep him? If the answer is yes, then you keep him. If you're worried about paying him whatever you think he's going to cost, you look at the trade market. It's the same with Io DeSunmu. I guess it's the same with Nikola Vucevic, but at his age, I don't know what the market is really going to be. And I also don't know like how enthusiastic you are about re-signing him. Like, I think you could probably get him at a low enough number that you're not thinking too hard about that. But you're in kind of a little bit of a transitional period because you have all this cap space coming. They seem to think that Josh Giddey is Tyrese Halliburton and that they are going to be the Pacers. I very much disagree with that. We'll see how that plays out. We won't. They're not going to be the Pacers. But let's just go through some of these guys that are like maybe on the table, see if there's anything there. Kobe White is the biggest one. He has been linked to a number of teams, Dallas, Minnesota, anybody that needs a guard. Let me throw this one out there to you. Chicago loves trading for younger lottery picks that haven't worked out. So Minnesota has an obvious appeal as far as Rob Dillingham goes. Do you think would this make sense for either side? Mike Conley, Rob Dillingham, and Joan Berenjay for Kobe White and Javon Carter. If you're the Bulls, you don't get any actual picks, but since when do they ever trade for picks? They like to trade for players. You get 2 recent first-round picks from Minnesota who you could hopefully try to develop, one of which in Berenjay is at a position of need at center. And if you're the Timberwolves, the appeal is obvious. You've addressed long-term point guard in the way that you hope to do with Rob Dillingham, but thus far haven't. Who says no?
That seems like something the Bulls would definitely accept. I think, strangely enough, I want to say the Wolves say no, and
We both love Berenjay, right?
I think this is just like a bigger conversation about what the Wolves trade deadline might end up doing. So this will be another episode, but like to say it pretty quickly, I think with the Wolves, I think a lot of their problems are a little overstated. It seems to be the same case every year, so I feel like they probably don't do that. I think the Wolves are probably hoping to get Kobe White at an even cheaper price than that, if possible. So I think that's actually a pretty good outcome for the Bulls. It's one of those trades where, okay, they're not getting any draft picks, mainly because the Wolves can't trade any draft picks, but they are still getting like players that you could consider draft picks because they are still so they still have so much ahead of them in terms of development. So if they have interest in those players, I could totally see the Bulls accepting that. And I don't think that's terrible if that's the best offer you get for him. But let's just take a step back and discuss Kobe White for a second, because he's been in enough trade rumors, trade reports about it's obvious other teams are telling whoever's reporting, we've talked to the Bulls, and yeah, seems like they're interested in moving White. Seems like a money thing. He's probably going to ask for something in the high 20s, low $30 million range annually. That's just my speculation, how much he's going to ask for. I am a little apprehensive he actually gets that. Nothing against him, but the prevailing trend that we keep repeating probably every other episode is the devaluing of smaller guards, scoring guards, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kobe gets a little less than he's probably hoping for. So if you're the Bulls, do you really want to would you trade him now, just get what you can, or would you play things out in free agency, even though you are taking a risk of him leaving?
I mean, it just depends on like what do you really want the team to be. I think it only makes sense. Well, I don't know if I want to say it only makes sense, but I think in all likelihood, the way they're envisioning their salary structure, you probably keep one of Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu. You let the other go because you probably are going to have to spend significantly on a forward at some point. There was that reporting that they want to find their version of Pascal Siakam because, again, they have this Pacers obsession that they're not going to live up to. And they have to get a center at some point as well. Like they have two very significant holes that they need to fill. And I think just given how cheap that team is, how unlikely it is that they'll ever pay the luxury tax, it gets kind of tricky if you're paying Josh Giddey 25 a year, Kobe White 25 a year. And I don't know where you think Io is. Like, is he mid-level? I think that seems about right.
I think so.
So 60 million tied up in three guards, plus you have Patrick Williams locked up into eternity, plus whatever expensive forward you trade for whoever you're playing at center. Like that adds up really quickly. And I don't think that they're going to be all that likely to like go into the tax for this caliber of team. So ultimately, I think if they have a preference between re-signing one of those guards or the other, I think I'd probably rather act now and get something back in a trade, especially with the appeal of this Minnesota trade, is that you're getting two guys on rookie deals. Now, Dillingham has spent 2 of those years. You still have 2 left, but you are getting guys with a little bit of cost control that you can evaluate moving forward. I think I would do it if I got 1.5 first round picks worth of value. I think that's the fair price. And I think Berenger is worth 1 and Dillingham's worth 0.5. So that seems reasonable to me. I'll just throw this out there to you too about the Bulls. They have all this cap space this offseason. Do you have a player you think they target? Like, do you have a way that you think they're going to use that cap space?
That's what I was trying to figure out is who would I target, but I think when you look at their history, when they had cap space last time in 2021, they kind of just went after who the best players available. Now, it worked to a very strong success because the players that were available were severely undervalued by the rest of the league. Getting Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso at the contracts they did. Lonzo, he was living up to that contract with the way he was playing. But clearly there was an injury big factor even before that, and the Bulls just signed them anyways. Who else? DeMar DeRozan. That one just seemed really opportunistic. It did seem like somewhat of not an overpay, but I don't think there's really another team. I don't think he was really getting quite that much.
We were talking about him going to the Clippers for the mid-level at that point. Because remember, he was going to go to the Lakers, and then the Lakers got Westbrook, and he was kind of stranded. And that was sort of at the peak of we don't like non-3-point shooting isolation guys as a league. So there really wasn't much room for, like, remember Kyle Lowry, ironically, DeMar's former teammate, was the belle of the ball that free agency. Everybody wanted him, and nobody wanted DeMar. And we were thinking, like, is he going to have to take the mid-level? And then the Bulls swoop in, which always happens in DeMar DeRozan free agencies, by the way, where one of these dumb teams looks around and goes, nobody wants DeMar DeRozan. Shrug, we'll take him. Like the Kings overpaid for him as well.
So I'm looking at some of the top free agents. You've got a lot of pretty good restricted free agent bigs. That's the thing that sticks out to me the most. They can try to make a big offer sheet at Jalen Duren, Walker Kessler, Mark Williams. I think there's another one I might be missing, but they do need a big. I think they should be able to get one, whether it's through free agency or trade. Not necessarily these restricted ones. I'm just saying the Bulls do jump out to me as a team that could try to make a big offer sheet to try to steal one of these players. Not a lot of talent in the wings department. I think the best is potentially Wiggins if he opts out. There's Kuminga with that team option, who they've been linked to. So it feels to me that if they don't make a move that uses up all their flexibility ahead of free agency, they'll just get what they can. Similar to previous free agencies, I don't know how interested they'll be in trading multiple first round picks again after how the Vucevic trade worked out. But I'll just answer my own question. I think if I'm the Bulls and I need to decide what to do with Kobe White, I think I'd play things out with him. I think that this trend is going to continue with with some of these guards not getting quite what they should probably be getting. I feel like most teams are pretty set at guard for the most part, and I struggle to see what team with cap space is going to make an offer so overwhelming that the Bulls would just prefer to let him go. Like if I'd have to see who the teams are. Like, are the Clippers gonna be the team that offers Kobe 30 million plus a year? Um,
I have an
I don't
idea
think it's
about
gonna
this
be.
actually.
I don't think it's gonna be the Lakers. Uh, like there's right now these teams plus the
Well,
Bulls are the only ones with cap space looking to be competitive. I think I'd play things out because I only thing with Kobe is if he's gonna be making high 20s plus. Okay, I understand if the Bulls are a little not a little apprehensive about that contract. That after the Zach LaVine experience, are they're afraid that it might be a negative value or something like that. But if you can get him at something not too far above what his current extension maximum is, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities that that's where his contract ends up getting. I so the choice between getting Kobe on that type of contract, which I think is more tradable in the future, should raise his trade value, versus getting that type of trade now that you suggested, I think I would want to try to get Kobe on a much better contract.
so I think there actually is one version of free agency that would make some sense where another team could pay Kobe White. And that would be something like the Fred VanVleet situation in Houston, where one of these teams at the absolute bottom just knows that they need to take a step. They need some veteran guard play to help improve the young prospects that they have as sort of like a developmental guide. I think I could see like Utah or Washington, for instance, more likely Washington because Keontae George has taken the step that he has. I could see Washington doing like 2 years team option for a third year at an inflated cap number that's like designed strictly to scare the Bulls, but it's not really a major long-term commitment. Like Washington has $100 million in cap space potentially. What are they doing with that money? Why wouldn't you just go to Kobe White and be like, 3 years, 90 million team option on the third year? And you can come in, you can be the veteran on a good young team and like maybe put up numbers, inflate your stats, maybe prove that you should be a part of what we have coming next. We'll see. Like that's a version of free agency that I could see playing out for Kobe White. There's a free agent for the Bulls that I think you really missed. I think they're very, very distinctly the Peyton Watson team because they want to play fast and they need a big athletic forward. I think, Josh Giddey is not Nikola Jokic, but having like a bigger playmaker whose vision can like really take advantage of Watson as a cutter would be very helpful. Watson obviously has started to make some threes this year, which is also helpful. I think Peyton Watson will want to try his luck as a starter somewhere this offseason. Like, even if it might be a Jeremy Grant situation where Denver might be willing to match the money, but Grant didn't want to stay in Denver. He wanted to go to Detroit and take the next step as a player. I think Peyton Watson might want something similar. I think the Bulls are a fit for him. I could see them throwing a lot of money his way. One of the issues the Bulls are going to have in free agency is that they overlap in terms of needs so much with the Lakers as far as defense and athleticism that like if Keon Ellis is deciding between the Bulls and the Lakers, he's going to pick the Bulls. I'm sorry, if Keon Ellis is deciding between the Bulls and Lakers, he's going to pick the Lakers. Mitchell Robinson is a guy in that vein. Quentin Grimes is a guy in that vein. Like if the Lakers have cap space, I think those are similar players that both might look at, but the Lakers just have all of these inherent advantages that the Bulls don't. Are there any other players on the Bulls you want to talk trade about? Any buyout candidates here? Zach Collins has shown some signs of life, but I don't think the Bulls would buy him out.
I think we'll know for sure in about a month or so. I I guess Vucevic is the only other one, and then I guess Dusudmu as well, because they are the two guys out of all the other free agents that are the Bulls probably want to make a decision on soon. I think with Dusudmu, he's extension eligible now. I feel like getting him at around the mid level is pretty good value. If he's trying to push for more, then I'd probably just play things out because I'm not sure he's going to get more than the mid level. But if there is to answer your Kobe White thing about if a team like the Wizards would offer him an inflated Fred VanVleet type deal, okay, if the Bulls do get some kind of intel that that's a possibility, then fine, trade him now, get what you can, and avoid that if you don't want that contract. So same thing with Dasumu. If you kind of get the feeling that he is going to get a contract higher than what they're hoping for, buy and see what you can get for him. But I do think you got to keep one of them. The Bulls have some pretty good guards. They can't just completely liquidate them. And with Vooch, I wonder if he might be a buyout candidate. Do you think the Bulls would potentially buy him out if there's no trade for him?
No, because I think they have a good relationship, and I think the Bulls look at this and say, like, we might just bring you back at a cheaper salary next year. You fit the way that we want to play, even if you're going to be a bench guy moving forward. I don't think they would. I will something I came up with just because Kristaps Porzingis has had the pot syndrome and it's been such a mess for him medically. I wonder if the Hawks might say we do need to get a shooting center in here who we can rely on. Would we do something like Porzingis in a couple of seconds for Vucevic and whatever matching salary, Javon Carter or something? Like, does that make any sense to you? I know that they had defensive visions for Porzingis, but if Porzingis isn't going to be healthy, do you consider just cutting bait on that and saying we got to get a shooting center in here?
I think that makes a lot of sense. The Hawks, I wonder if there's a little more they can do with that. Like they have two picks in next year's draft. They've got the Pelicans one, which are not going to move, but they've also got what's looking to be the Cavs first round pick. And I'm sure, based on how we're doing this in alphabetical order, we're going to talk about them next. But that swap is looking really nice for the Hawks, who they got two swaps, one in 26 and 28 for as part of the DeAndre Hunter trade. So that one looks like it should. I don't think the Cavs are going to be like a playing team. I feel like they should still finish like fifth or fourth at the most. So let's say it's low 20s. Could the Hawks maybe do something with that along with Porzingis? Maybe if the Bulls like a guy like Newell, uh, can you combine that and maybe get Kobe White as well? I wonder if there's something bigger that could be done. These two teams feel like they should be able to do something together.
Well, the theory of Kobe White is like, what if instead of paying Trae Young $50 million, we pay Kobe White 25 and we get this
Yep.
offense centric guard? And then, like, that's just waving the flag to the rest of the league. Hey, Trae Young's gone. Do you want to come trade for him? If you don't, like, we're not going to extend him. We're going to pressure him to opt out. No, that's not a crazy idea. I think that's totally feasible. One
Yeah.
last note on the Bulls that I want to point out before we move on. So they have this Portland pick. It's the lottery protected pick from Portland. I think the trade came all the way back in 2021, but it was a 7-year protection. It was lottery protected every year through 2027, and then it just vanished. Now, I don't think Portland knew at the time, but that pick has become quietly pretty significant for them because if it gets to 2028, which is the last year of the protection, they also have swap rights with the Bucks. Swap rights with the Bucks right now are very, very important because we don't think Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be on the team in 2028. So you can't risk losing your first round pick in 2028 if it comes attached to those swap rights with the Bucks. I wonder if the Blazers would talk to the Bulls and say, like, can we come up with some way to amend this so we're not at risk of losing that Bucks pick? And maybe the Bulls get some sort of sweetener, like a couple second round picks, or maybe they get Portland's pick unprotected next year or something. Is there something there?
Yeah, it sounds like a pick swap of some sorts. I don't really. I think that could be done without it getting any players involved. Um, so, are you with me? They're pretty. I don't think we're going to be able to predict anything the Bulls do this trade deadline.
You could tell me they make a win now trade because like they seem to really believe in their program. I don't agree, but like I don't think they want to be perpetual play-in. I think they have grander ambitions. Do I think they'll see them through? Probably not. But I do think at some point in the next few transaction cycles, they're going to do something notable and something we don't expect. So yeah, you could talk me in anything. Like we haven't brought up his name yet. He's going to come up with some other teams in this section, and it's going to come up in a lot of episodes. Frankly, you could talk me into Michael Porter Jr. for them. You just use expiring contracts and a first round pick. Like you could take me in a lot of different directions for the Bulls. That's enough on Chicago. They are, I think, the least interesting of the teams in this division. We now move on to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are $22 million above the second apron. They cannot aggregate salaries. They cannot take more money back in a trade than they send out. They cannot sign players on the buyout market unless they previously made less than the mid-level exception. They are hampered. These restrictions will almost certainly prevent them from like going after any kind of max player unless they come up with something very, very creative to get on the second apron. I'll say this from the jump. LeBron James is not realistic. The salary restrictions at this moment are just too significant. Anything that we come up with is going to involve the Bucks, or sorry, I'm Bucks on the brain, is going to involve the Cavaliers trading a player making more money than the player that they're getting back just as a way to sidestep those apron restrictions. Now, you brought up the pick swap. Right now, Cleveland is in line for the number 28 pick. Why? Because they made that DeAndre Hunter deal at last year's deadline where they gave swap rights to the Hawks, who already had swap rights attached to the Spurs. The Spurs would be picking at 28 right now, but actually that means that Cleveland would be picking at number 28. With Atlanta, I think picking at like 15 or 16 for Cleveland right now. I don't have that number right in front of me. The Cavaliers are number 9 in offense, number 16 in defense. They are 7-15. They lost their 15th game last season on March 28th. They lost their 15th game this season on Christmas. They were number 2 in three-point percentage last season. They are 20th this season. That's not the only thing going wrong, but that is the most easy statistical number to draw. Yossi, if you were running the Cleveland Cavaliers, what would you do?
Let's see how these next 2 to 3 weeks shake out. If I think they're going to be a little better now. I think they have been a little bit better, even though the results haven't quite shown it. Like they still played a pretty close game against the Knicks, and Garland's starting to look a lot better. At the same time, they're mostly healthy. Yeah, they're missing Max Strus, but I'm not going to really. I think we're past the point where you can give them the benefit of the doubt with injuries. Even with last year's playoffs, as injured as they are, it just felt like something was not going right at all. Even if they were healthy, I don't think it was going to be enough to beat the Pacers, for the Pacers to beat them that quickly. And I wonder if that kind of maybe broke them. If they've just not been the same team since then. It's not even being like a high floor regular season team, which seemed like this is what that team should do. And I think the moves they made in the offseason would have helped reinforce that. So I think if they continue to tread 500 over the next 2 to 3 weeks, you're gonna have to do something. I think they more realistically need to go on a big run. They need to get on like a 8-game winning streak at least for the Cavs to just kind of stay the same. But I don't anticipate that. I think we're past the point right now where I think they're going to be good. They'll probably go to the second round again with the East the way it is. I don't think they're going to be making any noise for getting to the conference finals, being a true contender for a championship. So they're going to have to do something. They're not going to tear down the roster. They're not going to do moves that I don't see them then doubling down, trading their one available first round pick
to
get someone who can improve them now with their apron situation. Anyways, they, as you mentioned, if they want to trade for LeBron or Giannis, they need to save $22 million in that deal in the process, which is so complicated. You need to satisfy the Nets most likely. I don't think they're going to have enough assets to satisfy multiple teams and something like that. I think though they're going to have to most likely save money if this continues. They're not going to get under the tax, 41 million above that threshold. They're not going to get under the second apron either unless they're really aggressive. But this $164 million tax penalty that they're projected for, it's not justified right now. So I would probably just start looking ahead a little bit, start looking to next year. What can the Cavs do to maximize their season next year? So we can get into moves in a little bit, but overall, what is your sentiment on how I'm viewing this?
I think there are three conversations that we need to have. It's what can you get for Darius Garland? I'm not saying you have to trade him, but like, let's scope out the landscape. What can you get for Jared Allen? Again, scope out the landscape. And what could you do to add to that core four? I'm not saying you have to do any of those things. I think having Mitchell locked up and having Mobley being as young as he is, you don't have to look at this as this year's the be all and end all. That being said, Boston and Indiana will be back at full strength next year, presumably. Detroit is only getting better. Atlanta's only getting better. You do want to take advantage of this very weak East. And that should mean exploring every possibility when it comes to trying to win. I can't see them just making a payroll cutting trade. Would some owners do that? Yes. I don't think Dan Gilbert is going to like go to the Nets and say, this season is not going the way we want it to go. We'll give you some second round draft capital, take Lonzo Ball off our hands, save us tens of millions of dollars. I don't think that's really in play.
I don't think that's not what I meant, by the way. I'll get to like some examples of the type of thing I'd be looking to do if I were them.
Well, let's go through these three possible, like these three scenarios of like, how can we mix the team up? Start with Darius Garland. We've talked about it this episode. Not too many teams have an appetite for small guards. I think Darius Garland is better than most of the players that we talk about in these conversations. He's certainly better than Kobe White. He is better than John Morant. He is better than Trae Young in my mind, and he's better than LaMelo Ball. Like, I think he is a tier above those guys. He doesn't have what De'Aaron Fox had, which is like defensive competence. Darius Garland is not a very good defender. He is very, very small. I think the sort of teams that would trade for him are teams on the upswing. I mentioned Washington for Kobe White. I think Washington makes some sense. So here's an idea that I had. CJ McCollum, Trey Johnson, and Washington's unprotected 2027 first round pick. So the Wizards could still tank this year, but they'd be giving up next year's pick to the Cavs for Darius Garland. What do you think of that?
I don't think the Cavs would do that. When I look at the Cavs roster, the thing that, not even look at their roster, when I see them play, I just think they need more toughness. And I think that's something that has been repeated about them. One type of framework, and I don't think this is going to work in a 1-for-1. And I'm not even saying that it even makes as much sense to target this specific player, but a type of framework that some people will throw out there is a Garland for Jalen Suggs type deal, where I think if you're going to keep your team around Donovan Mitchell, you still need another ball handler, I think. So if you can get a top tier defender who could still create and hit threes in the rate that Suggs has been hitting in the past years, but also stays healthy, which, I mean, to Garland's credit, he also hasn't really stayed healthy. That's really the type of move I would try to go for if I'm the Cavs. If you can get like it was between Strus and Hunter, they're fine. But can you get maybe some like, not, and I'm not saying can you get Dort, like you're not going to get Dort, but can you get like that type of defender also at the wing? They just need to get a little more physical. And these are the types of archetypes I would go after if I'm the Cavs, if I'm going to consider trading Garland. Like you could probably, in just with the value that Garland has, you should be able to get multiple of those players. I haven't looked to see what that deal could be. I haven't really looked into trading Garland at all, because I think if they trade him right now, they're selling him at a low. But just in terms of how I would probably alter the roster, and this is probably more of a 2026 offseason type decision, this is probably the types of changes I would be making.
It's just there are so few teams that have a player or that have a need for a player like Darius Garland that like sometimes the teams that want your players have things that you want and sometimes they don't. I think if they make a Darius Garland trade, the idea is going to be to liquidate. You're going to get things that you can then flip for other stuff in a Darius Garland trade, less than you're going to get the stuff you want for Darius Garland, which is why a young player and pick trade like this with Washington makes sense. If you had Washington's unprotected 2027 first round pick, you could go around the league, shop around and say like, who's the best 3-and-D player we could get for this very valuable pick? That's just an idea out there. And you'd keep Trey Johnson as a developmental prospect behind, as sort of a hopeful replacement for Garland. You've brought up Michael Porter Jr. in other episodes about Cleveland. How many first-round picks plus Porter gets Brooklyn Darius Garland?
I don't think either of those teams will be able to come to an agreement on that one. Each team's going to value their guy way more. And yes, Porter Jr. is much better right now. You can make an argument he'd help the Cavs a lot more than Garland could. Even like if Porter Jr. stays at this form, then the best version of Garland, you could make that case to me. I probably would still want the best form of Garland. I think the issue with Porter Jr., I've said this multiple times, is it's going to be really tough to put a value on him with this breakthrough he's having just coming so suddenly. So I would guess that the Cavs would probably be pushing for Porter Jr. plus picks from the Nets to do something like that. I understand Porter Jr. is a lot better right now, but I just cannot see the Cavs trading a stuff with Garland to get Porter.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the Nets would have to give up picks, not the Cavs.
Oh, okay. I misheard you.
Yes. Yeah, I think Brooklyn, the thing about Brooklyn is that these ball handling rookies that they picked have actually played pretty well. So a lot of the ball handler types they've been linked to, Darius Garland, a name that we're talking about here, as a free agent target for Kobe White or an Austin Reeves. I don't know that they're necessarily going to force it after all. So that does take one potential suitor off the market. I don't think the Nets would be that eager to give up a bunch of picks to get Darius Garland at this point. I think they'd rather liquidate Porter or just keep him for whatever they have coming next. But like the kind of player that they want is Herb Jones, somebody like that. They want like an elite 3-and-D wing. You mentioned Lou Dort as well. And the only way you get that is by trading Darius Garland. But the teams that have those guys don't need Darius Garland. So you're going to have to take multiple steps to get to that point. And it might take you multiple transaction cycles, frankly.
And multiple teams.
And multiple teams. Jared Allen, he is making $20 million this year. When he signed his extension, it looked pretty reasonable. He goes up to around $30 million next year. And I think that locks him up. Again, we'll get to that. It looked pretty reasonable at the time. Takes him up to around $30 million next year and keeps him there for 3 years. Right now, that looks like a bad contract to me. What is Jared Allen's trade value at this moment?
So I think as rough as it is this season, he is having a down year when you look at his numbers. He's having one of his worst shooting seasons. His rebounds took a dip. He is playing with injuries, but he's been playing with a lot of injuries in the past few years. I think that contract is going to be a big problem, but I do think with the way teams are valuing big men right now that I don't think he's got negative value. I think at worst he's got neutral, and the Cavs could potentially get a little something for him. It's not going to be a lot, but I think they could still get something for him. With teams like the Pacers, Celtics, I'm just naming the teams that need I'm just saying the teams that need big men. There could be a very strong market for big men that if I'm the Cavs, I would strongly consider getting in on. This is what I meant when I said that I'd be looking to save some money, but also try to set the table to improve next year. So as an example, as I look at teams that could use a center, one team who has a player who's also having a down year. Not that he's ever had an up year, but his value's down. Are the Warriors? I think as I look for like teams that need an upgrade at center, I feel like Allen might fit them a little more better than some of these other teams I just mentioned. The Warriors could do Kuminga for Allen straight up. Now, I don't think the Cavs need Kuminga. I would expand the trade a little bit. Like, let's say hypothetically the Jazz like Kuminga. Can you turn into a bigger trade where they take Kuminga and then they're also taking Lonzo Ball, and then the Jazz trade one of their crappier picks like in 27, 29. I would have said, okay, why don't the Cavs get their pick back? But it's a little more complicated because they did the Jazz did trade the lesser of their 27, 29s to the Suns in that pick swap from last year. But maybe there's something there where the Cavs can just get like a pick back in one of those years, helps open up their Stepien restrictions a little bit and gives them a little more ammo to do something. But you're also getting off Allen's $28 million for next year, and you get below the second apron. You have a lot more flexibility to try to do something to upgrade the roster. I would try to get off that Allen contract earlier than later. It's much easier to trade him now that he's making $20 million than $28 million. So that's not a perfect deal I just came up with, but that's the sort of thing I would try to do if I'm the Cavs if things don't get improved. Like, I don't think they're going to be able to change the roster to get back to title contention this year. I would just try to set the table for next year.
Yeah, didn't we find out during the Lowry Markkanen negotiations that Utah doesn't like Kuminga? I just want to make sure I have my facts right on that.
I want to say that all the teams that had a cap space last offseason probably show that they aren't interested in him. But just wanted to put some type of example where if there's a team that wants to take a shot at him and help the Cavs save money and just give him like a menial asset, that's what I would probably be hoping for if I'm the Cavs.
Yeah. I mean, if the Cavs could get a Warriors pick, I would be very, very into that. I've got a couple of Jared Allen ideas. I mean, the thing we haven't even mentioned yet is that Evan Mobley is playing more center than ever, and they've just proven like they're much more willing to close games with Mobley at center now. Jared Allen doesn't feel like somebody they're treating as a long-term piece with the way that they're operating. I've got a couple of ideas. Indiana, very straightforward. Lonzo Ball and Jared Allen for TJ McConnell and Obi Toppin.
Lonzo, Jarrett for TJ. Any picks
Basically,
involved?
no picks involved. The idea for Cleveland is that TJ McConnell can like be your Ty Jerome replacement and be what you hoped Lonzo would be this year. Lonzo has not made a shot all year. And Obi Toppin is not Jared Allen, or at least not the version of Jared Allen that signed that extension. But like, he's a very solid reserve on a cheaper contract locked up for multiple years. And then Indiana takes on the risk. Like, maybe Lonzo Ball is just terrible, or maybe Rick Carlisle can fix him. Maybe Jared Allen is overpaid, or maybe Tyrese Halliburton can turn him into an all-star again. Like, they're taking on the risk. Cavs got a lower ceiling, but they raise their floor a bit.
I think it's reasonable. I don't know if that's the direction the Cavs would want to go, just breaking up that money for more role players, because I feel like they're kind of deep enough as it is. They could use a depth because of all the injuries that they have, but I wonder if they want to try to just but you could also just try to get draft picks and save money and use that flexibility for something bigger a little later. So just depends what their priorities are. But I just think personally they're pretty deep on paper. When they're fully healthy, I think that's a pretty deep team. Even with Lonzo just not panning out. Okay, you still have Sam Merrill playing really well, handling the ball. Craig Porter's been serviceable.
Jalen Tyson rules.
Yeah, Jalen. They have a lot of good wings between, and I would anticipate Strus will come back pretty strong. I mean, I guess Toppin healthy would be an upgrade over Dean Wade with the way he's playing right now. And then you just hope that, because Tomlin's looking like he's going to be he's been in the rotation kind of, not like He's been a better option than Nance and Thomas Bryant for the most part. Still going to take him some time, but if he can, the Cavs probably would have traded Allen by now if Tomlin like really took the reins of that backup center position, which he hasn't quite done yet, but it feels like that's where it's trending. So, yeah, I think it's a reasonable trade. Just personally, I would probably look to just try to get below the second apron, get some trade flexibility for next year, and try to do something then.
Next Jared Allen idea, New Orleans. This is a 4-for-1, so you have to get another team involved just for roster reasons. Kevon Looney, Jose Alvarado, Yves Missi, and Carlo Matkovic. You would just get Missi as like a developmental Jared Allen type that you have less money invested in, but to kind of have somebody you hope could be a rim protector, rim runner. And then Jose Alvarado could help any team in the playoff mix. I think he would be basically their replacement for, again, Ty Jerome / what they wanted Lonzo to be. And the Pelicans just need a starting caliber defensive rebounding center to put next to Derek Queen. And, we've said that about Zion for years. The Zion ship has sailed, but like they have a power forward now with similar needs in Derek Queen. So, I mean, I brought up Isaiah Hartenstein for the Pelicans, Jared Allen, another example. I think they're going to be shopping for a center in the salary range. So anything there?
If I'm the Cavs, I take that 100%. You get Alvarado who pans out, who it takes that Lonzo role. You can try to dump Lonzo later. Then you get Yves Missi, who I'm not paying attention to the Pelicans, but I'm very intrigued with him. And if you can get him to be your backup big, I think with 2 extra years of team control, that's an amazing addition to get. Looney, I think you bring him in for the salary match and you probably decline him. Maybe, if you can bring him back on something a little less later. Otherwise, I think you're pretty set at center. Yeah, I think the Cavs, if that's on the table, I think the Cavs should definitely take that. You say, and then for the Pelicans, I know that I'm pretty sure they had interest in Jared Allen, but that was with David Griffin. So I don't know if they still be interested in that, but I think it would make sense if that's the cost that you're not really in on. Obviously, they're not really in on keeping Alvarado after the season with all the other guards that they've got. Seems like they're not really in on keeping Yves, developing him going forward. So if you can get him or any of these other centers that are going to be available for that price, I think that's reasonable. But I like it a lot more for the Cavs. But it is something I could totally see the Pelicans doing.
Right. I mean, New Orleans is actually about as well positioned to take in the Allen contract as anyone in the NBA because they have 2 starters in Fears and Queen that are on rookie deals and therefore super cheap. Their only major long-term expenses are Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, who are on like pretty reasonable long-term deals. You don't have a max guy on that team once you inevitably waive Zion. So like, okay, you're going to pay 30-ish million a year to Trey Murphy and to Jared Allen, a little bit less for Herb Jones on a discount deal. And then those 2 guys on the rookie deal, like your books are still relatively clean. You could still get pretty creative in the way that you built that roster. And like, if you started Fears, Murphy, Herb Jones, Derek Queen, and Jared Allen, like you're not winning the championship, but could that team like make the play-in next year? Sure, why not? Like it's a reasonably competitive team. Like I kind of like this for both sides. And I think this is about what the value would be, where like maybe one bad first round pick or like a couple of interesting, younger, cheaper players. I think that's around what Jared Allen would get. I've seen people suggest the Lakers. I think that ship has sailed. I think the Lakers have moved in another direction. The Pelicans were linked to Jared Allen in a lot of fake like Jared Allen for Herb Jones trade. I think that ship has sailed as well. I think Herb Jones is just more valuable. And then the last thing that we have to explore is what can they do keeping Allen and Garland? Could you maybe talk about that 2031 first round pick and whether it's Max Strus or DeAndre Hunter, one of those other contracts that you have? And I looked around and there just isn't really a 3-and-D guy in that range that makes sense. Like the name that kind of fit was like, would Phoenix consider an unprotected first in 2031 for Dylan Brooks? I think Phoenix is so happy with where they are right now that they probably wouldn't. So I don't really know who the name is. Is there anybody out there that you think would be like worth exploring for the 2031 first?
I haven't put much thought into it. I I don't think there's anyone that could really. Maybe Michael Porter Jr., but that trade, it would be a lot more complicated.
The salary is tough, yeah.
Maybe there's something both teams can do in a two-team trade, because the Nets do have 15 million in cap space, where if the Cavs trade that 2031 first, they trade Allen, some combination of I'm guessing it might take both Hunter and Struce, or maybe Lonzo for one of them. You're doing some really uneven trade, but is that enough value for the Nets?
So wait, what? The Nets are getting the 2031 pick, and that's
They're
exactly the trade they made with Cam Johnson,
No, so
essentially,
I'm
right?
saying
It's
they bring in, but the Cavs keep Mitchell, Mobley, and Garland. The Cavs are basically trading like three of the four of Hunter, Allen, Struce, Ball. And this is so the Cavs can get under the second apron. But all they're really so they're trading the 31 pick with those guys. I don't know if the math works. I haven't done it, but I'm assuming the Nets, with their extra cap space, with that room mid level also after that, maybe there's something that could be done to do some uneven trade while helping the Cavs aggregate while getting under the second apron. Maybe not. Maybe that's not quite
That's an
possible.
interest. No. Like I don't want to explore this too much on pod because we'd have to do a lot of math. The Cavs again would have to shed 22 million, and the Nets only have 15.4 million in cap space. So you do need a third team involved. Like you got to find somebody who can take in Jared Allen and send out $7 million less than Jared Allen is making. Indiana could do that. New Orleans, I haven't looked at, like maybe they could. I don't know. You'd have to find another team that could like make up that gap, but it's not a crazy idea. And we know the Nets love getting these unprotected picks deep in the future. And if they could do this and have Denver's pick in 32, New York's pick in 31, Cleveland's pick in 31, one of those three picks is hitting, and maybe even two. That's a pretty interesting idea that I hadn't thought of. If I were Cleveland, I might explore that. If you could like have a closing lineup of whichever one of the wings that you keep, plus Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Porter, I'm pretty into that. Like, I think that's an interesting idea. We just can't do this math live on air. Any other
Yeah.
Cleveland thoughts before we move on?
Cavs probably have to include Jalen Tyson as well. The Nets would push
No,
for that.
no chance. No. Like Jalen Tyson is like, because considering how expensive they are, somebody that good with 2 years of team control left after this one at the tiny number that he's at, that he's just, I'm not trading him for like anything unless it's like you have a chance to get Giannis or something.
Yeah. I think there's something there. Maybe a third team takes Allen. They only have to send out like 12 million to match his 20 million, but also trade another first round pick that goes to the Nets. I'm going to look into this.
Well, I'm sure this will come up again at some point before the deadline because like there will be Jared Allen rumors. We'll have another chance to talk about this. It's a very interesting concept that you came up with on the fly. Moving on, the Detroit Pistons, $19.3 million below the luxury tax line. They have the full mid-level exception available. Right now, they are slated to pick number 29 overall. They have full control over all of their future first-round picks. They functionally have around 60 million in expiring salary, Tobias Harris being the obvious. Duncan Robinson available, but Duncan Robinson's played very well for them. I don't think they're going to be super eager to give him up. Jaden Ivey, a restricted free agent, and Paul Reed with a team option for next year. So they are the belle of the ball going into this trade deadline. They have all of their picks. They have a very clear and defined need, not just for a power forward, but for shooting. They're 27th in 3-point attempts and 25th in 3-point percentage, 8th in offense, 2nd in defense. They can do basically whatever they want. They can make a trade of any sort of significance. If they want a blockbuster, there's probably a blockbuster available to them. If they want to do something smaller, there are smaller trades that are probably available to them. Yossi, I'm going to skip the what would you do question. I'm going to go right into these power forwards. They've been linked to a lot of them, whether it's Lowry Markkanen or Trey Murphy or Jaren Jackson or somebody I'm going to name a little later they haven't been linked to, but I would consider. Of all of the forward options for them, who is the one that you would want them to target most?
Michael Porter Jr.
I think I kind of agree, just given the expected price. I'd rather trade 1 first-round pick for Michael Porter Jr. than like really dive off the deep end with 3 or 4 for Trey Murphy or Lowry Markkanen, because I'd kind of like to see how that archetype works. And then, especially if it's a pick in the fairly near future, like their 26 or 27 pick, you deal with the steppy and quickly. You don't have an outlying pick. And then in 1 or 2 years, you say, we have much more data about our team. Now we take the big swing with a lot more information.
So I jumped off the they need to upgrade Tobias Harris train. I think right now they're playing with free money. They're going to be first or second in the East. They should at least advance to the second round. And just by doing that, they've progressed from last year. I think they really don't need to be turning up the pressure by making that type of trade now. I think they still need to explore, keep seeing keep gathering intel on what they've got. I think for the most part now, that's kind of mostly done. The biggest thing is, what is now what's it gonna be with Jaden Ivey, and I think it's, for many reasons we've discussed previously, that's probably going to be over. So I think if you ask me, they'll probably do something. I think it's going to be less than a 50% chance that they do some big consolidation trade to upgrade the 4. Because I think Tobias Harris is good in this role. They don't need they now in the future they're gonna need another guy. They're gonna need another major upgrade on offense in that lineup. They're gonna need to work on that somehow. But I think for now they should just play things out. I don't think organizationally they want to increase the pressure by making that trade, because as soon as you make any trade where you're upgrading your starters, you're doing that. We've discussed the possibility of Trey Murphy, if they can go after him. If we had like power rankings of a player's teams, of a trade candidate's most likely teams to join, I would probably rank, in my opinion, the Pistons number 1 for Trey. And it's mainly because it's contract. I think if you're gonna trade multiple firsts for someone now, or multiple firsts worth of value, depending on how much the Pelicans value Jaden Ivey, I think that's the type of move I would do now, where instead of having to re-sign Jaden Ivey to a little less than Trey Murphy, or having to deal with trying to sign and trade him for something else later, can you get a guy like him who's already locked into an awesome contract? I would probably consider trading a couple firsts for him. I think otherwise they're fine with Tobias now, and I think they could deal with power forward a little later.
So the Pistons already have Cade Cunningham locked into a max. It is thankfully a 25% max, right? Because, or did he make?
30.
Did he get he got the All NBA. Excuse
Yep.
me. He did get the Derrick Rose bump. So they have Cade Cunningham at a 30% max. They are probably going to have to come reasonably close to the max for Jalen Duren. Probably. They have a lot of veteran.
We'll see. That's an interesting discussion. Do you want to touch on that? Because
if I were the Lakers, if the Pistons are at all fidgety, Lakers 25% max, first day of free agency, no brainer. Like I think he absolutely has a 25% max offer.
I don't know yet. I think we'll try to touch on this just really quickly. I'm just gonna say I'm a little dubious about that right now. I think we'll have to see how the playoffs look. If they can make it to the conference finals, and I'm sure that the deeper they go, the more likely that is. Just still a little early right now. A 25% max for Duren pays about $45 million a year on average. 5 for 240. Before the offseason, so after they got eliminated by the Knicks, I projected, and there's a video, I made a video about it. I projected him to get like a 5 for 135 extension. Now I think he's risen his floor to like 5 for 175. So what is that? 35 million a year, something like that. Hold on, let me just do it really quick. Yeah, 35 million a year. I don't know. now we're kind of getting closer to the Reeves debate. Like he's getting a lot guys that are getting inching closer to the max, but now when you're really trying to like how do you say, like you're trying to really figure out his value, I'm still like at slightly below max. We'll see. I think it's a little early, but it's definitely possible, especially with restricted free agency, if there's going to be another team out there willing to just throw it out there, if not to get him, at least try to hurt the Pistons a little bit.
Would Utah have enough money to throw a max offer sheet at him without renouncing Walker Kessler? Because that'd actually be kind of funny if the Jazz threw the max at Jalen Duren and said, like, yeah, Walker, you're on the back burner here, and maybe we'll sign and trade you if we get Duren, but like we can also go back to you if we don't. Just as kind of a reminder to Walker Kessler, hey, we could do better than you. Either way, they're gonna have a lot. They're gonna have a lot of money earmarked for Jalen Duren. They have Asar Thompson coming up. I don't think it's feasible for them to fit Lowry Markkanen into their long-term into their balance sheet. I don't think trading for Michael Porter Jr. really turns up the heat that much. I think like that's a 1 first-round pick kind of guy. Like I think that's pretty low maintenance. You get a balance of like he's been in a role where he hasn't had the ball all the time in Denver, and he was fine. He wasn't as good as he is in Brooklyn, but we've seen more of his game with the Nets, and I think the Pistons would want some sort of happy medium. Do you think the Nets would take the 26th pick knowing how late it is?
No, they're going to want more than that. And that's where I think, again, that dissonance of what is Porter Jr.'s value right now is going to come into play, where I don't think the Pistons will want to trade another distant first for Porter Jr. right now. I agree. I think right now it's obvious that Tobias is a stopgap option for the Pistons right now, but for being the fifth option on that team, he's playing that role so well that if you bring in Porter Jr. to be like would he be the second option? He'd be a second or third option. I don't know how much better you're making the team when Tobias is already playing the role, playing this role pretty well as one of their better shooters. Not an amazing shooter for the Pistons, but one of their better ones for a team that could use some more shooting. So I think I would look to I'd be a little more patient there. See, and I think Michael Porter Jr. would be great for the Pistons long run. I just don't want to overpay. And I think we need some more time to see how long this Porter Jr. run lasts, if this is really who he is. Because I don't think what Porter Jr. is doing right now in the Nets, that's not what the Pistons are going to get. It's going to be a reduced version of that.
Mikal Bridges. It's the same. It's not the same, but it's a similar concept. Yes. One of the issues the Pistons are also going to have is that they're so young that their picks aren't all that valuable, because like, even if they trade 3 or 4 first round picks, so what? Unless they have injuries, their pick in 2032 is probably going to be in the 20s somewhere. So that's one of the dangers you run of like having a very young team without having traded in your picks early. Like, I'm not saying that's the worst position to be in the world of having to keep your picks, but it's going to be harder for them to get the kind of player value that they want, considering everybody's going to look at them and say, why are we trading for first round picks that are going to be number 26 overall? We should have the Jaden Ivey conversation too. I'll throw out an idea that I kind of just had on the fly. Jaden Ivey for Dante DiVincenzo.
I like it for the Pistons. I don't know if it's the same issue with Kobe White. I think Kobe White would be much better for the Wolves, but if you're going to bring in either of those guys, are you comfortable paying them whatever they're going to command with all their other financial limitations they've got? You got to be sure that this is going to be the guy, because they've already, between Conley's decline and Dillingham not looking like he's going to be the player that they're expecting, they got to make sure whoever they bring in at guard is right. But for the Pistons, I like that.
I think the idea is you could hopefully get Ivy at a little bit less than the number he wants. They could also take that into restricted free agency, because as we've discussed, we don't envision a huge market for any of the offense first guards. But I think if you're Jaden Ivey, Minnesota is like a perfect situation, right? You can be a starting point guard on a competitive team. Maybe you can get him for less than he would want and not have it be acrimonious. And this is kind of what Minnesota was hoping for with Rob Dillingham, was that they could get somebody young who could grow into the role alongside Anthony Edwards. It hasn't worked out that way. But let's say you were to get Jaden Ivey, you could kind of look at this and say, okay, Rudy is a little bit older, like probably on the decline, but we hope that eventually Berenger can replace him. We can kind of have as our longer term Ivy, Edwards, McDaniel, Naz Reid, and I guess Julius Randle. We'll see how much longer he lasts. He's not that old, but it feels like he's been around for a while because he was a one and done. I think he's like 29, 30, something like that. I don't know. But like my point is you'd have a lot of age aligned guys that have a fair amount of upside without picks that the Wolves again don't have. You kind of have to take a higher risk swing like that. Any other Jaden Ivey teams that you like?
Pelicans, who I already said earlier. Mavs, just with how chaotic everything is, I think that would be a good situation for him. But maybe the Bulls, if that's what they want to do, if they wanted to get him instead of having Kobe White, the Nets can use that'd be a good situation for him. The Suns, maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if the Suns have enough. I don't think that'd be a 2-team trade with the Pistons, but I just in terms of a situation for Ivy, I think the Suns might be good there. And the Bucks, just with everything going on there. Yeah, that's a good one.
You named a third of the league and you didn't land on my favorite one, which I've said in other episodes, is Memphis, because he theoretically can do play a similar style to John Morant, but you can get him for less money and then get him ahead of time and trade Ja afterward. You have a young, higher upside replacement in house. That's something that I would really consider. Yeah. We didn't even really talk about Jaren Jackson as a Pistons option. Is he just faded that much?
Like I said, I think I'm just a little off them trying to get a major upgrade at power forward right now.
Yeah.
Jaren has played a lot better. I have advocated that if the Grizzlies are going to trade Jaren, which I think deep down they're definitely going to listen to offers, would it be easier to trade him now before the extension kicks in, similar to Jared Allen? I'm guessing that the Grizzlies probably hold pad with John Jaren to try to wait until they can trade him for peak value. They set a high price with Bane. I'm sure they're not going to get that with Ja, but I could see them getting something similar for Jaren. But I'll say I want to get back to what you were saying about the Pistons trading distant picks and those most likely all being crappy. Like, has a team ever traded 3 first-round picks, their own first-round picks, at least 3 of them, and they all finished outside the top 20? Has that ever happened? Because as I look through like the past 6 years, I think every team that's done that type of trade has given up at least one pretty valuable pick.
Okay, but remember, we haven't, for most of NBA history, been in these positions where there are these really young, really good teams. Like most of the teams trading 3 first-round picks for a guy are teams like Phoenix or Brooklyn with Kyrie and Kevin Durant. Like they're teams that are already on the older side and have a lot of volatility. I don't really know what Detroit's volatility would be other than Cade getting hurt. Like the real test is going to be Orlando with Desmond Bane, because they gave away 4 first-round picks. And what we said at the time was, we're not sure, other than that pick that was coming from Phoenix, which now doesn't look quite as interesting. The Orlando picks probably aren't going to be great. We're going to have to see that one play out. But like, show me a team as young as the Pistons that's traded 3 first-round picks. I can't think of one.
I mean, the Cavs traded 4, and right now and like I said earlier, I think that pick probably goes as high as like 20. But right now they're having a really disastrous season. Like, what if I'm saying the Cavs right now, maybe like, I don't think they're going to give a lottery pick, but they could end up giving like, what if they give up like the 16th, 17th pick? That's still a lot higher than what anyone would have imagined for a Cavs team as young as they were at the time of the Mitchell trade, bringing him in at his prime, with Garland and Mobley set to have the steps they did, especially after the season they just had last year. It was kind of unthinkable that something like this can happen this year. Like it could just happen. Things can just go wrong. Knicks fans probably feel like none of their
Oh, their
picks that they
31
get.
that's a juicy pick. We don't have to get too deep
Yeah,
in. Like that 2031 pick is
I
explicitly good.
like right now with the Knicks on top of the East, it's really hard to imagine that type of thing. But maybe it's next year. Maybe like they're gonna overpick next year. What if things just kind of fall apart? What if the run is so strenuous and they suffer some injuries and that could be like a pretty decent pick? Like there's just so much variability between injuries, regressions, and the general nature of players wanting to move around that you got to be so careful when you're trading multiple picks. Like my rule of thumb is I would try to, if I'm going to trade multiple firsts for somebody, I would just offer like, okay, here's my next two picks, and that's kind of it. And
Well,
I
nobody
really
wants
don't feel
that.
exactly. That's why I wouldn't be the team that's trading for these all-stars because I don't have it in me. I guess I'm too disciplined to want to like go above that price. Like think about what the Lakers did. That's what they got. That's how they got Pau Gasol. Obviously you can't it's going to be hard to get away with that now. They kind of did it with Luka, but that's a whole nother discussion. I Once you go beyond that, you are really setting yourself up to potentially trade at least one very valuable pick. That's what history says.
What is the highest pick that Minnesota has given up for Rudy Gobert?
That's another interesting one. So far they've been like, I don't know, 25, I think at the most. Oh, you know what? No, I think the 23
They had
pick
one
was
play-in season. I just can't remember if that was the year
yes,
they gave away a pick.
2023. They were like 7th or 8th place, and maybe it was probably like something like 1920, something like that.
Well, let's look. I can't remember if that was the year that they gave up a pick. I'm just looking it up right now.
It was.
Oh, was that? Oh, that was Keontae George. Oh, okay. So that was like, but still, like number 16 is not that valuable a pick. They just happened to take somebody who turned into somebody pretty good. I'm
Yeah.
looking, man. Kobe Buffkin, Jordan Hawkins, like not a great run of picks before Keontae George, Jalen
So
Hood-Schifino after him.
but still, I think with the Wolves, that's just another team where it wouldn't. It's hard to imagine it with the way they've been playing, but it wouldn't shock me if 27 or 29 they trade a very good pick. So I think it's just impossible to predict how teams are going. That's why I think if you're the Pistons, like be, I wouldn't be in a rush to trade too many picks right now, and I definitely would not want to be trading my entire draft for anybody.
Yeah, I think there will come a time and a place where it might make sense. I'm much more willing to be aggressive under the right circumstances. I don't think they have to do it yet. I think they could kind of wait for the market to come to them and, see if there's a player who like wants to try to force his way to Detroit because playing with Cade is that appealing, or somebody for some reason or another whose value is a little bit lower, or maybe New Orleans's circumstances change and suddenly Trey Murphy is available for a slightly lower price. Like I think they can afford to wait a year or 2 years or 3 years, whatever it is, to make the perfect full draft trade as opposed to just making one now for the sake of doing it. That being said, I have a kind of wild card trade offer I want to throw out. I would have the Pistons trading Tobias Harris, Jaden Ivey, and Karis LeVert with no picks attached. Who do you think I'm about to trade to Detroit?
Trade away. This isn't the Jaren package,
No, this is no picks, those three players for one player coming back.
and it's no one we've discussed so far.
It is nobody we have said on this podcast.
I'm gonna be so pissed when I can't figure it out. Who is it?
Kawhi Leonard. You
Oh,
are giving
never
up
mind.
you're giving up nobody essential to this year's team for a chance to get a two-time Finals MVP, who by the way is playing pretty well this year. Like that's the sort of move you could make that makes you genuinely competitive with Oklahoma City and San Antonio if it goes right. And the risk is so minimal that I don't really see why you wouldn't do it if it's on the table. If you're the Clippers, you can just get Jaden Ivey for Kawhi Leonard, who you don't want anyway. I would 100% do that.
I have to think about that one. I don't know.
You know my feeling on this. We talked about the Lakers. We talked about a few teams. I think Kawhi Leonard could be like a pretty like low cost chance at a like true star addition for some of these teams that are asset limited. The Pistons obviously aren't asset limited, but like if they don't want to make a full draft trade, but they want to make a substantial upgrade, this is their chance to do it.
It would be so funny if Kawhi is traded and he wins a championship immediately and he becomes the mercenary who wins a championship in every stop but the Clippers, who he spent the most time on.
It'd be kind of funny if this whole Kawhi era in the Clippers, it sort of started with the Pistons trading Tobias Harris for Blake Griffin. And then it would end with the Clippers trading Kawhi and getting Tobias Harris back.
I mean, that'd be a pretty good rental. If long you could just trade for Kawhi and he's got to play out this year and the next and deal with it from there. I think if the Clippers trade him, he kind of loses he's already at a point where he's kind of lost agency, where in terms of location, he wants to be in LA. I don't know how much the Lakers are interested in him. Clippers, clearly that might be ending whether or not they want that with that investigation. So I think Kawhi is going to have to, if he wants to continue his career, he might have to start getting open to places other than LA.
Kawhi, you're under contract for 18 more months. You don't want to live in Detroit, just do it for a year and a half and then sign with the Lakers for the minimum. Like, it's not that long. You'll deal with it. Toronto trading back for Kawhi is another fun idea that we didn't bring up during the Atlantic Division podcast. We talked about the Raptors, but like, I am convinced that there is a team out there that is looking at Kawhi and saying, like, if we can get him for pennies on the dollar, I think it's worthwhile. Any other Pistons notes before we move on?
Let's move on.
The Indiana Pacers are $4.3 million below the luxury tax line. They have the full mid-level exception available. They also have effectively the full mid-level exception again through the disabled player exception for Tyrese Halliburton. If the NBA draft were tomorrow, or I should say if the NBA draft lottery were tomorrow, they would have the second best odds for the number one overall pick. Their 2026 or 2026-27 finances very much depend on where they draft. Without factoring in their first round pick, they are around $20 million below the luxury tax line. If they pick at number 2, they're about $6 million below the luxury tax line. That does not include Benedict Mathurin, who is having his best year ever. And that does not include a starting center either. So, Yossi, what would you do if you were running the Indiana Pacers?
Yeah, I just want to say on capsheets.com, I have updated lottery draft pick projections for all 30 picks. So yeah, I've got them, like you said, about a little over 6 million below the tax. So
all of my numbers come from cap sheets, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. And I just completely updated them today. It's so interesting with the Pacers. They're mostly healthy in terms of the players that are supposed to be in their rotation this year, with the exception of Neesmith and then Toppin, but mainly Neesmith. That's the one guy that they're really missing. And I'm a little surprised that they are still in this pace that they're at, where now even some of the projection models like ESPN, BPI, now they're projecting them to only win 22 games, which would be the second worst record in the league. I'm a little surprised that they're going to be quite that bad, but we'll see. There's still some season ahead, but the longer this goes, the more likely it is that maybe Siakam starts to play a little less. And it feels like when we had our tanking discussion last week, we were looking at the teams that we're trying to see, okay, who are these new rules targeting? And the only team that we could really say it was relevant to right now are the Wizards. But once you get to March, okay, maybe the league can start to get upset at the Pacers if they start to do some stuff. We'll see. But if they're going to be on pace to have the second worst record, I think for the most part, they should just sit tight, do nothing. I wouldn't want to trade I'd be afraid of trading any draft equity right now, even one that's like maybe next year's, even though they're probably going to be pretty good next year. With that number 2 pick, or not even that number 2 pick, like you're going to have a top 6-ish pick, maybe you can get a big man there. If you get a top 3 pick, you just take the best player available. And I just wouldn't be in a rush right now to upgrade the roster. And I think most likely, let's say they even do want to get a center right now, like Zubats, for example. I think that's going to cost a lot. But even if they were able to get him, I don't think that's going to change their current outlook for the rest of this year. They'll probably still comfortably bottom out. So if the price is really, really low, if you can just turn one of your rotation guys like Toppin or uh, Benedict Mathurin for your big man, I would do it. Otherwise, I'd probably just sit tight and maybe use some of my flexibility to do a salary dump for another team. They've got roughly like 4-ish million under the tax for the rest of this season. You still have your mid-level, so maybe you can just try to get another couple more second-round picks, something like that. Like that's all I'd really do if I'm the Pacers. Also, see what's out there for Toppin and McConnell. I think if you can get off those guys a little earlier, if you can get some positive value for them, now's probably the time.
I would keep Toppin. He's young enough that, he fits so well with Halliburton. I'd be happy to keep him. I think my main goals would be number one, let's cash in on TJ McConnell now. I just think at his age, it doesn't make sense to bring him into the playoffs next year at what I think it would be 35. I think he's just of more use to a win now team. If you can get a couple seconds, a late first, something like that, I would do it. And like, by the way, like we saw how impactful he could be in the playoffs last year. He almost like swung the championship for Indiana.
Yep.
That should not be taken lightly. Like if you're a team with a late first round pick and some bad salary to trade, I would very seriously be looking at TJ McConnell. And then I think we both agree that Benedict Mathurin, at least for now, doesn't fit into their cap sheet moving forward unless they were to move somebody like McConnell or Obi Toppin, somebody else. But like even then, what's Mathurin's role? Because he's gonna want starter money. He's not starting over Halliburton. He's not starting over Neesmith. He's not starting over Nemhard. He's not starting over Siakam, and they have to get a center. So he'd be a very expensive 6-man. And that doesn't even factor in the possibility that the Pacers get like a top 3 pick. And like Cam Boozer is coming off of their bench, or Darren Peterson's coming off of their bench. Like, I think this is just a situation where Mathurin is going to want not only money, but a role that the Pacers can't really give him. If I were them, I would be looking around the league and saying, how can we turn Mathurin, and if we have to consider other draft capital, so be it, into our next center? So let's go through a couple of the names. Zubats, you brought up. The question is, how much draft capital does it take? I would not do 2 first-round picks plus Mathurin, but could you do Obi Toppin, Benedict Mathurin? I had the 2028 Pacers pick and a 2029 swap. The reason I did that was that the Clippers owe their pick to the Sixers in 2028. So they get a replacement pick in 28. And then in 2029, they owe swap rights to the Sixers. They could potentially swap with Indiana on top of that to maybe get some value back. Would that do it for Zubats and Chris Dunn for you?
I wonder if do you think you can keep your picks if it's Mathurin and Walker for Zubats?
No, I don't think Walker has that much value.
Okay. I think there's something there. If they can just then trade one first, maybe add some slight protections on it, and it's not too far into the future. If they think Zubats is the top guy that they can realistically get, then okay. It's just a little tough because there's a lot of big men available right now, and the issue when they lost Miles Turner is that it's going to be very hard to get another big man like him. I don't think any such big is going to be available like that anytime soon. So I'm thinking if you're Indiana, maybe you want to do what the Mavs did. Like, can you get Gafford without trading a first round pick?
He's the next name I have. Yes.
And then can you get another big man who's like similarly valued, and that's like your big man rotation? Like the way the Mavs had Gafford and Lively, can you get like 2 similar guys like that? And they're both making like no more than 20 million a year. It doesn't cost you many firsts at all. That's like another path I could see them doing.
Matherin and Isaiah Jackson for Daniel Gafford and D'Angelo Russell works. It saves the Mavs a bit of money. It keeps the Pacers under the tax, but it takes into their flexibility. That if I'm Dallas and I got offered Matherin for Gafford, that's kind of maybe not a no-brainer just because of Lively's injuries, but I would be pretty eager to do that if I could. They badly need another guard, even with Kyrie coming back. And Matherin, like maybe he's somebody you could keep long term next to Cooper Flag. So I think there's a potential fit there, certainly on the Dallas end, right?
Yeah, but I brought up Miles Turner. Could they get Miles Turner back? Is that a possibility?
They don't want him at that contract. It's that simple. If they wanted him at that contract, they would have given it to him. And by the way, he has not lived up to that contract thus far.
I have a theory on that. I feel like it sounds like he didn't give them the chance to match this.
But they wouldn't have either way, I don't think, just given their history and given where they were.
I think they would have. I think they would have. I think it sounds like they played the market with him. They said, okay, go find the better offer. And he did, but he probably felt so disrespected that they were even trying to play this game with him that he just took the Bucks offer and that was that. So I guess it kind of comes down to would Turner want to come back? And I don't know. Guess we'll see about that, but he doesn't really have that much say in it. Also, Turner, he's got a trade bonus, by the way, that if he were traded at the trade deadline, so he's making $25 million now, that would bump up by $3 million. So now he's starting to make like $38 million a year over the course of his deal. So, okay, maybe Indiana starts to get a little apprehensive there with that element, but I think if I had the choice of Miles Turner in the field and you only maybe have to trade one first round pick worth of value, I think I just get Turner and stick to what works. What if you can get him for Matherin, Walker, and McConnell?
No, he just hasn't played well this year. And by the way, this contract this year should be the best he's going to be in that contract, given where he is in the age curve. I wouldn't want him in that contract unless like it would have to be a situation where I was also getting Giannis because he so distinctly fits next to Giannis. I don't know. I'm not really a fan of that contract.
But this Bucks team is not optimizing. Like he has shot it pretty poorly, but I feel like if he goes back to the Pacers, he'd be better than this. I don't know. I think if I'm Indiana, unless there's another guy like him available, which I don't think there is, like I think that's who you need to get back to that ceiling from last year. I don't know. He might not be worth the contract, but if he could be close to where he was last year, and he wasn't like amazing last year either. He hasn't been like he's been probably $20 million a year player. Like he's been living up to that contract. But if he's gonna stay like that, I think I'd be okay with overpaying a little bit. If I don't
necessarily know that they need to have a shooting starting center because A, they have Jay Huff who can shoot and can play a smaller bench role, and B, those Siakam top and lineups have worked for them in the past. Like they have other ways of generating 5-out lineups. So I don't think they have to go all in on a center that can shoot. I wish Nick Claxton's cap number this year was a little bit lower. I know his contract descends. It goes from 25 to 23 to 20. I maybe would be interested. I think he could do a lot of interesting things for them defensively. And the other thing I love about Nick Claxton for Indiana is that he's such a good passer and would fit so well into that offense where the ball is flying around. Any interest there?
I thought about it. I think I like him. Like if Zubac is the top guy, the top center available, I think for the Pacers, I think Claxton might be the second best for those reasons you just mentioned.
Yeah, I think he's probably gettable. I don't think anybody in Brooklyn, other than the players that they just picked last year, is really like nailed down. I think he's pretty gettable. The question would be, are you giving up a first round pick for Nick Claxton when all of your salary is good? That's the tough thing. You'd have to hope that they'd want Matherin, I think.
It's going to be tough dealing with the Nets. They're for sure going to want draft equity. I don't know. The more I talk about it, I know you disagree. The more I feel that the Pacers should try to get Miles Turner back.
Yeah, we just don't agree on that. Like, I am not willing to touch that contract unless there are like very specific circumstances where, like, if you're trading for Giannis and your incumbent center is not a shooter, then it makes sense to also trade for Miles Turner. Other than that, I would not want to touch that contract. They're going to be expensive. They're going to have to make some hard choices. I just don't think that really makes sense. Any other Pacers thoughts before we move on to, ironically, Miles Turner's team?
Any what you asked me with Ivy, any Matherin teams that like what are your three favorite Matherin spots?
I like Dallas a lot because I like the idea that he could grow into, especially like Kyrie comes back either late this year or next year. He wouldn't have to be a primary ball handler or anything. He could focus just on scoring. But maybe as Kyrie gets older, he could age into a bigger role. That's the only one that really came to mind. I think the Clippers, just because they're so old and stodgy, do make a lot of sense just having a younger athlete like that. As I look through the league, though, like, I think that variety of athletic ball handler could help a lot of teams. I don't think they'd have trouble finding a suitor for him if they moved him.
For me, same three teams we overlapped with Ivy. Mavs, I agree. Bucks and Clippers and Grizzlies. Well, maybe not. Grizzlies a little lower there, but I think
Grizzlies need a point guard. They don't need like just a on-ball scorer. And I guess Jaden Ivey is more of a
yeah.
shooting guard, but I think Jaden Ivey has more point guard, as some point guard skills. Matherin is just
Ooh,
explicitly like not a point
what
guard.
about the Bulls? Not Kobe White going to the Pacers, but Kobe White going to a different team. Maybe the Pacers get a big man and the Bulls get Matherin.
That's actually kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think he could fit in a fast-paced team. He's done it in Indiana. Yeah, there's something there. I like that. And I could see them throwing an offer sheet at him over the summer too.
Yeah, might as well. If they think they can get Matherin at less than White, might as well try to make that swap now.
The
All right.
Milwaukee Bucks, who we have talked about in 50 episodes at least over the last 2-3 months, are 3.6. Oh no, I'm reading wrong note. They are $13.8 million below the luxury tax. They have $3.6 million of their cap room mid-level exception left. At present, they would pick number 11 in the NBA draft. They cannot trade that pick because of the Stepien rule. However, in a tactic that we've discussed in other episodes and may bring back in this one, there are ways around that where they could trade their 2026 first round pick. You could either trade for another 2026 first round pick. You could trade for another 2027 first round pick. And again, you'd be trading for a lower one just to satisfy Stepien. Or you could offer swap rights on your 2026 first round pick, where the value would come in a team picking in like the 20s, moving up and getting that Milwaukee pick potentially in the late lottery. They have the most bonkers, idiotic offensive profile I think I have ever seen. The Milwaukee Bucks are second in effective field goal percentage and 23rd in offensive rating. How is that possible? It's the possession game. They're dead last in offensive rebounding and they're 10th in highest turnover rate. So they make all of their shots, but because the other team shoots so much more than them, they have one of the worst offenses in the NBA. They are 9-8 with Giannis Antetokounmpo in the lineup. They are 3-10 without him. I think that's 3-11 now. They lost to Memphis tonight. Look, I'm not going to bother asking what you think they should do. We have been in agreement from the start. Trade Giannis. That's done. It's over. We have done so many episodes devoted to Giannis trades. I don't think we have to spend time on Giannis trades. In a world in which the Bucks keep Giannis through the deadline, what are you doing?
I think this is what I would do. But first, let me ask you a question. I'm looking at Tankathon right now. So you mentioned the Bucks were slotted at 11th. Now they slide to 10th. On a different note, the Pacers now have the worst record in the league because the Wizards beat the Raptors. They have two more losses than the Wizards. So, and then I think did they play tonight? Yeah, they lost to the Celtics. They got blown out. No, just this is great for the Pacers. They're gonna if this stays, they're gonna have a top 5 pick.
The basketball gods, after the shenanigans they pulled with Dallas last May, owe it to the basketball world to give Indiana just one of the top 3 picks. I don't care if it's AJ or Boozer or Peterson. The Pacers deserve this. Karmically, they are owed.
No, this is ethical tanking, as they call it. But I don't know. Let's see what it feels like the Pacers might fit the profile, the types of teams in recent years, like the Wizards, Hornets, Nets, who just get screwed by this process. But we'll see, because I don't think they've ever really jumped in the lottery. And they've barely been in the lottery this century, but in all their times, they've never been in the top 4. I think the highest pick they had was the 6th pick with Mathurin. But anyways, let me ask you back to the Bucks.
I could actually look that up. I have a table. I just have to find it in my Google Docs of every lottery jump in NBA. It's like I have a tracker of like every team's lottery history and how many spots that they've jumped. Yeah. I'd have to find it. I don't have it in front of me, but
Pacers
I don't
definitely did not jump.
Yeah. Oh,
they have not. They definitely have not.
I think they did once for Rick Smits. But I think
I'm talking about this century.
For Rick Smits.
I'm talking about since 2000. But anyways, so the Bucks currently have 10th. Do you know where I have them slotted on capsheets.com for their draft positioning?
Where?
8th. I think this is going to keep getting worse. I'm predicting right now, this could change in our next podcast, but I'm starting to feel of the mind that the Bucks, they're posturing, as they say, we're buyers right now. I don't think they're actually going to make that type of move. I don't think it makes sense for them to trade for bad contracts just to try to hopefully improve the situation. I think this Giannis calf strain is going to drag out. I think he's going to miss a lot more time. I think they're going to negotiate with some teams over the next few months and extend that past the trade deadline. I don't think they trade him. I think they're going to use these next 2 months plus then after the trade deadline, carrying over the negotiations toward the offseason to get the best offer for Giannis. And with his unavailability, I think they're going to be, I want to say, 8th worst team in the league. Because you've got, let me see what the order I've got. I think they're going, assuming Giannis doesn't get traded and he continues to miss time, the only teams I see finishing with a worse record are the Wizards, Pacers, Jazz, Kings, Nets, Pelicans, and Hornets. I think it's.
I wouldn't stop with the Hornets. The Hornets have been pretty good lately. I think the Hornets have a real chance at making the play-in.
So, okay, so they could be 7th then. Either way, I think they are looking at that range. I think it's going to keep getting uglier, and I think the Bucks I think they're going to want to try to get the highest pick they can, hope for some luck, get into the top 3. Because you mentioned the Pacers, I don't think the Pacers really need it, considering that they are a really good center away to being back in title contention.
Well, they don't need it, but they deserve it.
Oh, deserve. Okay. But I like to look at it as who needs it. If you want to look at these 8 teams I just mentioned, I think it's between the Nets, Kings, and Bucks in terms of who needs it, who really needs a top 3 pick. If those 3 teams jump into the top 3, I think it would be the basketball gods giving them mercy and giving them a chance to actually be a perennial playoff team over the next decade. If the Bucks get a top 3 pick, I think that's going to really change their outlook post Giannis. If you can get a top 3 pick, then you trade Giannis and maybe you get some other young pieces that can help fit around your top 3 guy, because you're not going to have control of your picks. I think that really changes the outlook in terms of what these next 3 years are going to look like. Well, so
can I stop you right there?
Nothing to do with the trade deadline, but
I want to follow this thread. Say the Bucks get a top 3 pick. Does Giannis go to them and say, "I'll extend if you trade that for win now help"? And if so, is there a trade out there? It feels a little bit to me like Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, where the Colts get the number 1 pick when Peyton's hurt, and it's like, all right, we have the number 1 pick. How are we going to rebuild around me? And they're like, no, sorry, buddy, we're cutting you. You figure it out. If the Bucks get a top 3 pick, even without their own picks moving forward, I think they would just say, yeah, we're going to trade Giannis. We're going to rebuild around this guy.
Yep.
And it's going to be kind of funny. Like Giannis will frame it as I got forced out. They wanted to go young. I didn't do a thing, but it would be kind of a funny outcome. Should we
Yep.
kind of go through the perfunctory exercise of like guys they could trade for if they did want to try to win now? Because that reporting is out there. I don't think either of us thinks they're really going to make a super hefty trade offer for somebody. I don't think they're going to dig that much of a deeper draft pick hole. But should we just go through some of the names?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of did it last week. I think they could get any of these guys. I'm sure we're about to mention.
I mean, Herb Jones is probably out of the price range, but if I were New Orleans
Right.
and I could get unprotected and 31 and 32 from the Bucks, I would do it in a heartbeat. Andrew Wiggins, you could probably get for one of those guys.
Oh, you're talking about like good players on like positive value contracts. Okay, that's different.
Right. No. We did a whole episode on bad contracts. They could
Yeah.
Again, I want to make this clear. Like the Zach LaVine stuff to me makes no sense whatsoever because they don't need shot making. They rank second in effective field goal percentage. The thing that's going to fix their offense is Doc Rivers getting out of the goddamn Stone Age and accepting that offensive rebounding is an important part of basketball these days. Like they don't need more scoring. They need athleticism on the wings more than anything. They need defense. So we've gone through the bad contracts, the Zach LaVines, the Jeremy Grants. Any other names that we talk? Like who else did we talk about?
I get where I don't think we need to talk too much more about these names you're about to mention because I just think that is just, it'd be irresponsible if they trade what would most likely need to be a first round pick to bring in one of those guys. It'd be a late first round pick in the future just to, like, I don't think any of those players are going to get the Bucks out of that spot where I have them like 7th, 8th worst team in the league. I don't think they're going to beat them. That helps get that much more above that. So no, I don't think they're going to do any sort of trade where they actually improve their team. I think it's just like rightfully so. This is a stance they kind of have to take right now so they can maximize their potential return in a Giannis trade eventually.
So our listenership, I would like to think, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, are nerds, right? I don't think it's casual fans that are on minute 98 of this Central Division trade deadline preview. I think it's only for the truly devoted cap nerds and fake trade aficionados. I pitched you, I think, what I believe to be the most unhinged Stepien rule avoidance in the history of this podcast before we began. The concept here is that one player the Bucks might like is Derek Jones Jr. Fits the bill for them, athletic wing, can be a point of attack defender for them, at least make wide open threes. Not a great shooter, but can make wide open threes. Problem, the Bucks are not going to trade their 31 or 32 pick for him. They're probably not going to trade their 26 straight up for him either. Like they don't have that mid-value first round pick, low value first round pick to trade for a guy like Derek Jones Jr. Here's what I came up with. To sidestep the Stepien rule for both the Bucks and the Clippers. The Clippers would trade Derek Jones Jr., the lesser of their own pick and Oklahoma City's pick in 2027, and the lesser of their own pick and Philadelphia's pick in 2029. In exchange, they would get Gary Trent Jr. and Gary Harris just as matching salary. They would get Milwaukee's pick in 2026, which is technically the lesser of Milwaukee and New Orleans, but we expect Milwaukee. Wait, we didn't even talk about this. How are the Bucks going to jump into the top 3 with New Orleans and the swap rights? Atlanta would get the top 3 pick.
Well, they can get.
We didn't talk about that before.
Both
of them would have to be in the top 3.
Well, all the swap really means is the Bucks cannot get the number 1 pick in this year's draft, but they could get 2
right. No, but if the Pelicans are in the top 3 and the Bucks aren't, like they would both have to be in the top 3 for the Bucks to get a top 3 pick. Yes. No, Yossi, if the Bucks are 3 and
you're right.
And the Pelicans
but
are 4,
like,
exactly.
But there's just no possible way they could get the number 1 pick. That's the other thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, the idea would basically be in this trade, they would send out Gary Trent and Gary Harris. They would send out the lesser of their own pick and New Orleans' pick. And then they would send out the lesser of their own Portland and Washington in 2028. And essentially the idea there would be they are trading 2 first-round picks for 2 first-round picks and Derek Jones Jr. It's just that they're trading the best of those second round pick or those first round picks because it's their own this year, which might be in the lottery. It's an unhinged proposal. Again, I'm just going to say the whole thing again because we got interrupted by that New Orleans side trap. Derrick Jones Jr., 2027 Clippers or Thunder, 2029 Clippers or Sixers for Gary Trent, Gary Harris, 2026 Bucks or Pelicans, and 2028 Bucks, Wizards, or Blazers. It's 2 first-round picks for 2 first-round picks with Derrick Jones Jr. involved, and the Clippers getting an actually good first-round pick. Is it going to happen? No. I just had a lot of fun coming up with a trade that sidestepped the Seppian rule for both the Bucks and the Clippers. I'm just proud of what I came up with, so let me have that.
No, I like the creativity. I just don't know if either of these teams would go through this with just Derrick Jones Jr. involved.
The Clippers would. If the Clippers can get that Bucks pick, they'd do that.
So let's say the Bucks, I think there's a pretty good chance that they'll hold on to Giannis and maybe shut him down later. But how does that impact the rest of their trade deadline? And I don't mean like in terms of buying. I mean, do they look to do other sorts of selling on their roster?
Well, it depends. Are they shutting down Giannis with an idea that we're trading him over the summer? Or are they shutting down Giannis with an idea that, like, we'll have a high pick, we'll have access to our 2033 pick, we're going to make one last push over the summer to improve to try to convince Giannis to stay? I kind of think that puts you in a holding pattern. You don't make a win now trade, but you also don't sell off anyone that Giannis might want to play with. I think you probably, if you shut Giannis down, you just shut down the whole trade deadline.
Do you think... this is just coming to my head. Do you think there's something the Bucks can offer the Hawks to get rid of the swap? Or do you like would they be interested in Turner maybe to fulfill the sort of the Porzingis role that they no longer have?
So like Porzingis for Turner, and the Hawks relinquish the swap right and just have the New Orleans pick. I wouldn't want the Turner contract if I were Atlanta. So that's kind of
okay.
Could I get Ryan Rollins? I'd do it then.
I'm sure there's something that could be done with that, but I'm just wondering if there is something the Bucks, as I look at their situation, if there's something they could do with the Hawks to just try to get rid of that swap so they could really not go all out and try to maximize their pick.
I'm going to go the other way. I mean, yes, they can't maximize their pick because of the swap, but they're never going to catch New Orleans in the standings, I don't think. I think they're so far behind them that you can... Actually, I don't have Tankathon up. How close are they?
Well, they're not that close right now. They are close. They're only 4.5 games ahead, which... when it was only a quarter of the season done, that seems like a really huge gulf, but like that's really, when you get to March, that's actually like pretty 4 games isn't that much. So like this early on, yeah, the Bucks could definitely catch up with the Pelicans, especially with the Pelicans starting to get their shit together a little bit. It wouldn't surprise me if they're basically tied. If that's how it ends up.
If that's the case, then that swap right just becomes way more valuable to Atlanta. So I think you'd have to get something pretty substantial. Ryan Rollins, given his very cheap contract and how good he's been, would maybe do that, but I don't think the Bucks would give up Ryan Rollins. I think he's too much of an organizational win. So I think that it's an interesting idea, but I don't think they would actually go through with it. But I think the more we talk this out, the more I think we both realize they should probably do nothing at the deadline. Now, if somebody wants to bowl them over for Giannis, I would do it, to be clear. We just don't think they actually will. Aside from that, I don't think either of us wants them taking on bad money or giving up future draft capital or doing anything reckless that could look really dumb 6 months from now when Giannis is on another team. So the only thing I think we'd want to do is if somebody's willing to bowl me over for Giannis, and let me avoid the drama this offseason and let me avoid a scenario where Giannis is like saying only the Knicks or only the Lakers or whatever, then I would do it. But neither of us thinks that there's a Giannis trade out there at the moment, right?
Yeah, as more time passes, seems like a lot of the likely suspects of teams that would make sense to pursue him, they're not really interested. Probably the biggest development in the past few weeks is the Spurs looking like they can
They're
actually win
out.
the championship. Yeah,
Yeah.
I fine. I think I would at this point, yeah, I'd probably stick to what I've got. Uh, seems like there is no 3 guard problem. They've got a 3 guard
Solution.
solution. Yeah.
Well,
So
this is another conversation. We're gonna do an episode at some point about roster building trends, and I think there's a lot to get into about why San Antonio's specific 3 guard alignment works as well as it does, and why the league has moved in a direction where that's suddenly more viable than it used to be. But yeah, I don't think they're all that eager to break those guys up. Castle is, I mean, very impressive as a rookie, but I think we were both skeptical because of the shot. Now Castle's just a future all-star. There's just no getting around it.
yeah,
Maybe even a 2026 all-star. Like, has Stephon Castle been better than Devin Booker? Because Devin Booker's on that bubble. Has Stephon Castle been better than Jamal Murray? Like,
in the aggregate,
maybe?
I suppose he's been better than Booker just because well, I mean, actually, Stephon Castle also missed a lot of time, so maybe not.
Well, my point is, like, I don't even think it's that crazy that Castle makes the All-Star team this year. And if he doesn't this year, I think the path is wide open for him next year. So they're
Yeah.
not moving Castle. That ship has sailed.
So
Houston, probably
yeah,
not.
Houston, no. New
We
York,
both
I don't
think,
think so.
yeah, we both think at this point that the way this ends is the offseason comes and Giannis says, I would like to be a New York Knick. And then that whittles the field down to the Knicks and the teams that are unafraid of trading for him, even with that edict, which are the Los Angeles Lakers and the Miami Heat. And this probably ends with him going to the Miami Heat because they have more to trade than the Lakers, right? That's what we both think.
The Heat right now, if I had to power rank Giannis teams for trading for him this season, I think they'd be my number one because they got the win today against the Hawks. I watched some of that. They almost blew it against them. But I think between a lot of their young players, namely Khalil Ware, I would imagine that is the player where I wouldn't be surprised if come trade deadline, we hear some reports, rumors that the Bucks are interested in Ware, and now his name starts to enter that realm of, oh, the Suns couldn't get Amari because they wouldn't trade JJ Hickson, or there's a couple other names like that, like Pajemski's being thrown out, has been
Who was,
rumored.
oh, Roddy Beaubois.
Yeah, like I don't, and I think Ware's a lot better than those guys, but I do think that if we get to a point where the Heat are within grasp of being able to get Giannis, and the big holdup is Ware, I think there's going to be a huge debate online everywhere about the people are going to really have to like project like what is Ware going to be? Is he like he's putting up double doubles but hasn't exactly translated to he wins this month? So there's gonna and I'm not saying that's my position. I'm just saying there's going to be a huge early dissection of a guy like Ware, but I think they have enough. I think Ware could be intriguing enough and young enough where if he's a centerpiece along with a couple picks and Tyler Hero, I could see the Bucks taking that. The other team I wouldn't rule out are the Warriors, and honestly, I feel like the Lakers, just because I think at this point, the longer this goes, the more the Lakers cap space becomes a viable threat, and it's just a matter of if Giannis is interested in going there. But anything else before we move on to potential rental situations?
I think the Lakers are for now a tough fit because of the Austin Reeves free agency situation where I don't think he'd want to go to the Bucks. I don't think he'd want to extend there. I think he would just jump ship to Brooklyn or Washington or the Clippers or whatever. I think he could do a lot better. So that's the issue with the Lakers. If Giannis's goal is just I want to win a second championship, what he should do is become a free agent in 2027 and sign with the Lakers then. Like that's what he should do if the goal is just win another title. But I don't think he's going to because nobody does that anymore. No, let's move on to potential rentals.
If you're we've talked about the Cavs. You said you would trade Evan Mobley for Giannis. Would you still do that?
Yes. I think
Even
if the Cavs get Giannis, I think they could win the championship this year.
this is assuming that this is just a rental, that Giannis is going to not resign with the Cavs in 2027. You would still do that?
I think you have a 2-year window where the East is vulnerable. I think you'd make the finals, and I think you could convince him to stay, just like they did with Donovan Mitchell, by the way.
I would do that with Mitchell. I'm pretty sure I said we've had this discussion like a month ago, but if I'm gonna rent Giannis, I would do that trading Donovan Mitchell because I'm not just because of his upcoming contract situation where I don't think I'm gonna want to resign him anyways in 2027 when he can get that 35% max. If that's what it's gonna cost, as great as Donovan Mitchell is, I don't want to give him that contract. So if I can do Mitchell and then, you get the Nets involved, you trade Allen and then probably Hunter, probably a little more salary to get under the second apron so you can fulfill the aggregation. I would definitely do that if I'm going to rent them. I'd probably still keep Mobley and Garland just out of pure youth.
The best rental team, I think, but they can't do it during the season. They'd have to in the offseason. Orlando, Paolo for Giannis with whatever salary is needed to make that work is very, very interesting to me because the Paolo Franz debates have heated up this year. And I think Franz has frankly surpassed him and has been better. I think they have all of the pieces you would need to be a successful team around Giannis. I think that team would be just a nightmare to play against given the size and physicality they'd have. That's the rental that I like most.
Yeah, we've touched on that. I think the Magic are going to take a little longer than the consensus probably feels to even get to a state where they'd consider separating Paolo and Franz. Now as you listen to people talk about the Magic, you're starting to hear, okay, a lot of guys are starting to not be in on the Paolo Franz pairing, or at least they don't see it really as like an additive combination in the long term. I've pretty much been there for a little while now. I feel like the Magic like internally might never get there. I think they just like these guys so much. I wouldn't be surprised if they just hold on to both of them for dear life because they drafted them both and they have certain attributes that are attractive to them, mainly their size. And I think they're going to have a very hard time just even considering separating these two.
I think there's a difference between like deciding, oh, we have to separate these guys, what's out there, and proactively saying we have a chance to get Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think a player that good forces you to reevaluate everything in your orbit as an organization.
Yeah, and obviously Weltman or Hammond, one of them.
Hammond picked him in Milwaukee.
Yes. Rental. I don't know. Those are the two that really jump out to me. Where that you definitely raising the odds and they actually have something to give the Bucks. I just think Paolo though, even though we're both lower on him, I feel like they're kind of, are they potentially selling low on Paolo? As crazy as that sounds for getting Giannis.
I mean, I think that would potentially make you so good, and like you'd be shortening your window for sure, and you'd be exposing yourself to a lot of downside risk because you have a first-round pick out in 2030. So that's Giannis will not be Giannis in 2030. So you are exposing yourself to a fair amount of risk. At a certain point, though, like Giannis is like you can win the championship with him. He can win MVP. He can go into a series against Jokic or Luka or Wemby or SGA or whoever and be the best player in that series. Like at a certain point, somebody's just going to have to say he's so good. Let's just dive in.
Because the alternative is, let's say you can trade him to the Nets. I'm sure the Nets would want to trade for Paolo. You get Michael Porter Jr. like 5 first-round picks and like probably, and let's say they negotiate for like some pretty good first-round picks. Obviously, you're not getting Giannis, but I think you're going to be in a better position to further build a team and to potentially win a championship later than just outright getting Giannis. You get a guy who would really help the Magic. I think that's another team where we're talking about Michael Porter Jr. teams. If the Magic were to part with one of Franz or Paolo, I would try to replace him with Michael Porter Jr. and get a bunch of picks. Anyways, we're on a big tangent right now.
This is becoming a Magic episode. We got to do them next week or whenever we do the next one. So let's save the Magic stuff. There's no other rentals we like.
The only other rental that I've put some thought and I've floated to you very lightly is the Thunder. And I'm not saying this as an overreaction to what's happened in the past few weeks, losing twice to the Spurs or 3 times to the Spurs and also to the Wolves. But let's say the Thunder could get Giannis for the small price of Hardenstein, Dort, Topic, and then like a bunch, and then like 3 first-round picks. And I'm saying that like it wouldn't shock me if that is actually the best offer on the table for the Bucks in the trade deadline. I don't think the Bucks would accept it, but just in the off chance that they want to just take the best package possible and that's it. Do you do that if you're the Thunder? Just rent Giannis for 2 years and deal with it later? Or would you rather keep Hardenstein picks? Well, I don't know. I haven't gotten that far.
It's a different conversation if you're talking about like Clippers 2026, Clippers 2027 versus like, you know, our own picks in 28, 29. Yeah. Like, well, it's a very different conversation depending on what the picks are.
Because I'm more concerned about but the picks aside, I'm a little more concerned is it better to just run 2 years with Giannis, or do I want to keep Hardenstein and Dort for the potential of getting them to extend on even more team friendlier deals? That might be a stretch because there's going to be teams out there that are probably going to offer them pretty big contracts just to hurt the Thunder, because the Thunder, people are going to want to chip away at their depth to weaken them. And once they're over the second apron, they're not really going to be able to replace those guys unless they trade them ahead of time. So, but maybe they want to still try to have as much depth as possible. That's where I'm more concerned. If you're the Thunder, would you do that 2-year rental, but then you're really chip away at your depth 2 years from now, or do you just stay the course?
I do it if I have control over which pick. Like, I'm not doing it with the Clipper picks. I think they're in such a good position that like I'm not touching the super valuable picks. If it's like some of my lesser picks, I do that. Yeah, like if it's just like Dort and Hartenstein, whatever money, and like 4 picks that I don't consider especially valuable, yeah, why not? And the reason you do that, aside from getting Giannis, is that you keep Giannis away from a team that could hurt you. Like, not that I think that the teams that are going to get Giannis are all that dangerous to the Thunder, but like, you probably don't want to play a Laker team with Giannis and Luka. So, yeah, depending on which picks it is, I'd consider it, but I'm not doing it for the Clipper picks.
Yeah, I can't really think of other rentals that for a contender, for a team that has a legit chance to be a contender, it's worth trading a bunch of a really big asset for.
I think we'll have plenty of time to talk about Giannis more the deeper we go. We've been going for like 2 hours at this point, and I thought coming in the Central Division was not going to be one of the more interesting ones that we did, and it turns out we had plenty to say. Anything else? Anything you want to plug before we go?
No, just listen. If you're new to this, subscribe to Third Apron wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Substack. I will be getting more in depth on teams in the coming weeks as we get closer to the trade deadline.
Yes, read cbssports.com. I have something coming. I assume we're publishing this Monday. I have the only big thing I have coming on this upcoming week is I'm doing predictions for the new year. So things that will happen in 2026. I have some spicy ones in there. So keep an eye out for that. And then the week after that is when my trade deadline content really starts to pick up. So keep an eye on that. I'm sure we'll do the Southeast Division at some point in the next week. So keep an eye out for that. And if there's news, if there's rumors, maybe we'll be back. Either way, thank you for listening. Have a good, maybe this is the last podcast of 2026, maybe not. I'll preemptively say Happy New Year. And if we have to say it again, so be it. You'll have a doubly Happy New Year. So thank you for listening and Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy last week of December, everybody. Enjoy your time off if you have some.